showing my audience, the BFFs, that not only am I saving smart and budgeting and investing, but also still getting to have a fun life, I think that's powerful. It shows everybody that you can, in fact, have it all, just not all at once.
All right. Hey, Julia.
Hey, how you doing?
I am doing well. I am, I'm excited about our episode today, and I have been. I came across something that I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
So this past week on the Skim on Instagram, they shared a stat that I thought was incredible. They were talking about how, I'm going to read this because I don't want to screw it up. More than a third of couples misjudge their partner's salary by more than $25,000, and that after a spouse's death, the end of a marriage, 3/4 of women experience negative financial surprises like hidden debt or less money in their savings than they thought that they had as a couple. And so they sourced this information. I did some digging, researching and stuff. You know me. So they sourced this information from an article in the New York Times that we'll drop in the show notes that was written by Diane Harris. And in it, she quotes a survey from USB that says that of the survey, the people surveyed, women found that after their spouse's death, that it's that they don't know their financial situation. So while the Skim is talking about couples, and there's a lot of information about it, really is more about women. Like, women don't know. They kind of, rely on, if they have a spouse or a partner, to handle this information. And I was just blown away by that.
I think that's a generational thing too. I wonder I'm always like wondering what the age is about that, because I think there's different ages. Like, I was brought up, like, especially with coworkers, you don't talk about salary. And I remember working with younger people and they all went in at the same time raises, because they were all basically the same levels and all got the same raise.
That's great.
Yeah, I remember them specifically, kind of like, it was that idea, I think, that happened years ago when Friends, when they found out that this person was going to get more, and then they banded together so everybody got the same amount of every episode.
Yeah.
So it was that way, because men talk about money where women, that's just not a thing most women talk about.
Well, and I don't even know.
I think they talk specifics. Like, I think it's specifics where women is more of a general.
Well, and I feel like you're right from a generational standpoint. Maybe our generation, maybe the ones before us, it was kind of taboo. There was always this kind of idea. But then like, how do you teach for those that have children or are godparents, aunts, uncles, the mentors? How do you teach young people about finances and responsibility and stuff if you don't talk about money?
I think you're teaching it, but you're not teaching them to openly talk about it. I think it's different. You're teaching them to talk within their personal family dynamic, maybe, but not necessarily out of the family dynamic. No, the reason why, like, I just remember them meeting up outside at a park, and they all brought their pay stubs. Every single one of them was a lower legal assistant. I will never forget this. They went to the park, they laid it all out, and everybody saw what everybody, because it was all raise time. And they kind of went in collectively, very silently, but very collectively. And 4 of them saying, we're doing the same thing. Why is he? Because they all had graduated at the same time. We're not talking they all started at the same time, graduated college at the same time, doing the same exact work.
It's the Friends model, remember?
It's the Friends model. That's what I said. So I think that when I think about it, they talk openly in very specific numbers, like not trying to, like, that's why I think that article, I would be curious of what was the ages.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're talking about divorce and death and stuff, but that can happen at any age. But I think my bigger takeaway was, like, women need to take ownership of their financial situation, know it, be actively involved if they have a partner, like the couples. And then, of course, the article, the Times article, talked a lot about how to establish like goals and how to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
They can be tricky. Don't talk so much about money, talk about goals, talk about, if we want to get rich, what does rich mean to you? What does rich mean to me? Different people have different ideas of what that looks like. So it was interesting, but yeah, I kind of took away from it. Like, come on, women, like we need to,
it also like brings into the perspective of, that story that was in California, and it's actually in the guest's book about the Black family putting up their home to get one thing, and then putting up white photos and literally getting way more than it's all those things. So I think that's also couple by couple and racial dynamic by dynamic, because that's always different.
Oh, for sure.
And I think sometimes a lot of those articles, I haven't read the article, so I don't know, they kind of leave that part out.
Yes. Yeah, and it does. I mean, it's a more generic article, because I think the conversation per the article could be had in any demographic. But yeah, because it's more about how do you talk about this with your partner and less about all of the structural racism that goes into.
Can't wait to read it.
Yes. But the great thing is we have an awesome guest today who is an expert in all of this, who's going to talk about it with us and enlighten us and hopefully help our audience grow into.
And I highly recommend I'm going to tell people to read the book and listen to it at the same time, because there are moments, it's kind of like this new way of doing it. I was cracking up laughing. Like I'm reading the words, but hearing her voice say it was kind of literally like, She is sitting down next to me having this conversation.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I only read it with my own voice, so I will go back and listen to it with her. Awesome. All right. So we are thrilled to welcome Vivian to Just Getting Better. Vivian is a University of Chicago grad, ex-Wall Street trader, strategy sales partner at a tech company, and your Rich BFF. Woo! She started your Rich BFF as a passion project to share bite-able lessons on financial literacy and lifestyle. Since then, she's built a community of over 8 million besties, helping one another get rich and stay rich. And her first book, Rich AF, is a New York Times bestseller. Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat.
Yes,
absolutely.
Vivian, thank you. We're so excited. I was telling Michelle, I read the book and listened to it at the same time. And yes, because that's the new way. I started doing that with some YA books. Well, kind of like Fourth Wing. I started with that, and now I'm like hooked to like hear the author and then read it at the same time. And I was cackling because the tone, like I'm reading it with your voice in my head, but it's also mixing with my voice. But to hear you and the tone, I was like, oh, she gives no F's about this. Like it is like she is saying it in the book. Like, because I kept thinking maybe she's gonna skip up. Nope, you was like, nope, I'm saying this, and I just want to tell you, thank you.
Of course. No, I'm so grateful. And I'm so grateful to my publisher for letting me write my book in basically my tone of speaking. I think for a lot of us, those of us who have read a lot of personal finance books, they can come off a little dry. And the number one positive piece of feedback was, I really appreciate that you didn't write this like a college econ professor. You wrote this exactly how you talk. Unfortunately, I have one mode, and it is a silly one, but I get to, talk to everybody in the book just like I would online.
Well, I have copies now for my millennial daughter and my Gen Z sons. So yes, I think that it's a much more interesting for them to learn through your voice than, like you said, for the dry voices. But Vivian, so let's jump into questions. So you are a personal finance force. Your Instagram is just pure fire for me. Yet you share that if someone had told you 5 years ago that this would be your life, you would not have believed them. How did growing up in a modest immigrant family and having a strong female mentor as your first job on Wall Street prepare you for your life as your rich BFF? And then also, how did the haters, like the asshole guy who became your boss, how did he also, people like him and him also prepare you for being your rich BFF?
Yeah, well, listen, I got to thank everybody, right? My haters are my motivators. So I think, growing up as the only daughter to two Chinese immigrant parents, no pressure there, like there was a lot discussed about budgeting and saving and scrimping, and we have to go without. You can't have this, no pack of gum in the checkout line, at the grocery store. But we never had conversations around owning my power, growing my wealth, demanding what I was worth. And I didn't have those conversations until I actually started my first job. My now mentor, then first manager, she was the first rich Asian woman I had ever seen. And I don't mean just like in the movies, but I mean really rich. And I knew she was really rich because she would walk into work every single day with a new designer bag. And I was just eyeing all of these bags. They were so beautiful. I went over to her apartment, which she owned. That was another big, rich indicator. And this was the real dead giveaway. She could afford to have a dog in New York City. I was like, I know you've got it made, because dogs are so expensive. And I wanted to be like her so very desperately. And I was so lucky. She took me under her wing, taught me a lot of the basics that I now teach other people. And she was my rich BFF. Like, that is what I thought of her as. I was like, how nice to have someone who can give me this education that my parents didn't, and my parents couldn't. Ultimately, things happen. The head of my desk ends up getting let go. He fires half of the team overnight. It just looks like a very different group than the one I had joined. And I get taken from my manager mentor and assigned to a new manager. And ultimately, that was the beginning of the end. This guy, I could not get a single thing right with him. I had a reputation on the desk already of being known as like a real go-getter, someone who could get their work done, who was smart. And for this guy, it was the fact that I wore makeup to the office, or the fact that my nails click-clacked on the keyboard. And there were things that he just was never going to get over. And one day I came into the office with a long cardigan on, perfectly, Ann Taylor approved. And he looked at me, touched his hands together and bowed and said, "Is that a kimono?" And as the youngest person on the team, as someone whose entire career trajectory and end of year bonus and promotion schedule was going to be determined by this man, I knew he was never, ever going to be looking out for me. He wasn't going to be in the back room with the head of the desk, pounding the table, saying things like, "She has to get paid. We have to promote her. She's such great talent. We have to keep her." He was never going to respect me. And there was nothing I could do to change that. And so I obviously scuttle right back to my first manager mentor, and I snitch. I tell her, I'm like, this is what happens. I'm going to quit. And she said, "Don't do that. You don't have another job lined up." And I said, "You are correct." And I went and sat myself back down at my seat and toughed it out for the rest of the day. But I think she was devastated, because she had come up in a time, she's, I believe a little bit more than like 15 years my senior. So she had come up during a much harder time where this was probably a lot more commonplace. And I was very lucky to have come up in a, I would say more progressive era, although albeit still very bro-dominated Wall Street. And she was like, "Listen, I'll help you find another job." So I started interviewing with hedge funds, asset managers, and she said, "Oh, also, just out of curiosity, would you consider an industry switch?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she says, "Well, I have a girlfriend who now works in media and tech. Would you have any interest?" I'm like, "I'll do whatever to get away from this man." And her best friend became my first manager at BuzzFeed. And I got that job, not necessarily because I was qualified, but because of my network. And looking back on that entire experience, I am still very grateful to have gotten my start in such a competitive and intense environment, because I cut my teeth amongst some of the brightest people on the planet. And I feel very grateful to have had that experience. Do I wish it had gone differently? Sure. But things happen for a reason. And I have to look back and thank that horrible, terrible man, because without him saying that to me, without that very literal 30-second interaction, I wouldn't have your rich BFF. I'd probably still be working there.
And
I'm assuming he's this guy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
I had to give my shout out and my dedication.
And so it was that the starting point for when you made a decision to not be the boring financial bro kind of person. And because like your like you have a fashion highlight on your Instagram, right? And that's so different. Like you have money stuff, but there's like the fashion thing. And I was like, oh, well, that looked very different, even for a lot of women to me. That you're like, hey, I like fashion too. Like we all do. When was that decision made? Was that like when you decided to immediately go into like content creation, or like when you're like your full self at like BuzzFeed?
Yeah. So when I started my job at BuzzFeed, obviously I was very desperate for friendship. So I would sit with certain different groups, whether they be on my team or other people that I'd met through like the AAPI ERG, whatever. We'd get lunch together and they'd be like, oh, like where'd you come from? Like, what was your last job? And when they would find out that I had previously worked on Wall Street, their eyes would light up. And immediately the follow-up question would be like, can you help me rebalance my 401k? And so I became known as the friend who would help do that. And I was, helping people with their 401ks. They would ask me which health insurance plan they should pick. Are our company stock options worth anything? And it got to the point where so many people were asking me the same question. I was like, you guys are so annoying. I'm just going to put this on the internet so you guys can stop harassing me during my 30 minutes for lunch. And this all came at the encouragement of, a woman that I called my work wife. She really was the most famous person I'd ever met. She had 10,000 followers on Instagram. She ran a food blog. And she said, I think people would really appreciate this. And I was like, no, because people want to watch you make cookies. They don't care about their 401k. She's like, I disagree, but just try it. My very first video I put onto TikTok and it ends up getting 3 million views. Very first video. I have no idea what I'm doing. And by the end of the week, I have 170,000 followers. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I had no plan for the future. I did not plan to become a creator. I did not plan to run this business. It was all just for my coworkers.
Wow.
I'm just like, okay. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Julia is my work wife. I just want to say that. Yeah. And Jasmine's both of our side puzzles.
Yeah. That's really what it is. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Wow. I'm blown away by that because I love your videos. I'm mesmerized by the one where you're like, you've got the clamp and you're like talking finances, but you're doing your hair. And I've watched that 3 times.
I think, Julia mentioned the fashion highlights, and Michelle, you're talking about me using my little kitsch to like heatless curl my hair. What I think is so lost in traditional personal finance education is that it treats money in a vacuum. And it's like, you should want more money for the sake of having more money. Why? Like, explain it to me. Whereas I think one of the most important quotes that I've heard from a mentor was, money isn't everything, but everything is money. And I think about this in the context of my entire life as a young woman. So I am not someone who wakes up and starts thinking about money, but I am someone who wakes up and starts thinking about, ooh, what cute workout outfit should I put on to take to my Pilates class, which by the way is $42 a session, which by the way, I have to look cute at. So this workout set's going to cost XYZ. And after that, I want to go get brunch with my girlfriends. And after that, I would also like to go get a facial, or God forbid, a 31-year-old woman wants to get a little Botox, a little help so my 11s don't get deeper. And like my entire life, as is everybody's, by the way, revolves around money, but we're just not having the conversation. And it's frustrating to me when people talk about money in a vacuum, because it's not. It's an emotional decision. It's an emotional decision to have to say to your friends, I can't afford drinks this week. It's an emotional decision to say, I can't get my nails done this week. I need to prioritize my money somewhere else. And I think showing my audience, the BFFs, that not only am I saving smart and budgeting and investing, but also still getting to have a fun life and wear cute clothes, but maybe I'm getting them from Marshall's where I'm able to find them at a price I also love. Like, I think that's powerful. It shows everybody that you can, in fact, have it all, just not all at once.
Absolutely. Well, you've already talked about how the finance industry is very male dominated, the bro culture and all that. And I was actually, Julie and I were talking just before you came on about something that the Skim shared that came from a New York Times article that came from a USB survey about women in particular, and how they're not up to date, on their finances. Oftentimes they think that their spouse makes more money. There's a misunderstanding there. They haven't talked about, goals for the future, and if they want to be rich, what that means. And they're finding sometimes in divorces or deaths that there's not as much money as they once had. Julian, I think that, of course, some of this is probably generational, but I'm curious to you, are you seeing this change? And why is it so important for women of all ages, occupations, marriage status, whatever, to have financial literacy? And what advice do you offer women to grow their financial literacy and confidence?
Can I tell you, the PR firm that did the mayonnaise to aioli rebrand also did the men were like bad with money to good with money rebrand. And I think it's so crazy because we have positioned women as like a worse category of money managers, when in fact, like the stats tell a very different story. More single women than single men own homes in all 50 states. Women have less debt across every single category, with the exception of student loans, because as we've all seen in the headlines, we're becoming more and more educated. And Fidelity even did a survey that showed that their women investors, their portfolios outperform those of their male counterparts. And so when we see data that says like women are not involved with their money, they don't know how much they have, they don't know what to do with it, I think a lot of that stems from this public narrative of like women are bad with money, they need a man to help them manage it, they're shopaholics, overspenders. And if you hear that same messaging enough times, you start to believe it. And if I were to look in the mirror every single day and be like, I don't like what I'm seeing, over time, I think I would have really, really low self-confidence. But if I wake up every day, as I do, I do this actually, I'm like, you are the smartest person, you are capable, anything that you have done because you've earned it. Like I hype myself up every morning. And eventually you start to believe it. You start to believe you're actually that good. You're that smart. You're that talented. And I think it's this self-perpetuating, like thing that if we were to tell women that they should be in charge, that they should be accountable, that they should be an active participant in their family's finances, they would be. But we've basically branded men as the end all be all when it comes to financial stability and choices and decision making. And I find that to be very problematic. First and foremost, for the generation before ours, like our grandmothers didn't just love our grandfathers more. They just couldn't leave. Like they couldn't have their own bank accounts until 1974. They couldn't have their own credit cards. Like that's crazy to me. Whereas now women are delaying starting families, delaying getting married, delaying all these things because they don't have to. They don't need someone to buy the house for them. They don't need someone to support them. And certainly there are plenty of women that are like, I don't even need a man. I just want kids. And so I think there is a generational shift happening, but I'm really looking for that PR firm to come and give women's relationship with money a rebrand as well. Because I don't know how they turned gross, yucky mayonnaise into garlic aioli, but they need to do that for the perception of women and money.
Well, and it's also a disservice to men too. It puts a lot of pressure on men. I mean, to have this all figured out instead of like, let's do this together.
1,000%. And I don't want to sit here and like sound like I'm man bashing. Truly, like it has been detrimental to both sides of the coin. Mm-hmm. We had this very like 1950s picture of like, the man is the breadwinner. They have to make money. They have to take care of the entire family unit. And if they don't, they are an absolute failure. And that does a huge disservice because one, that tells men that their only value is money. I find that to be weird because you should also be kind and thoughtful and caring and also picking up some of that unpaid labor at home. But also like these days, more and more families very literally cannot afford to live off of one income. So as more and more families become dual income households, like it can almost feel emasculating when it shouldn't, because why would you want to have all of your eggs in one basket when you can have two baskets? In the same way that I tell people, don't invest in one company in your entire portfolio. You should be investing in 500 different companies. This is the same premise. Why have money coming in one direction when you can have it coming in from two directions? And just know that your family is a little bit more protected and a little bit more taken care of.
Well, Vivian, that leads us to the next question. What do you think the top 3 areas women should invest their money?
First and foremost, I think it should just be in their investment portfolio. It is the only way that you can have a 2-income household as one single person, because you work hard for your money and your money works hard for you. 2, I think it's really powerful to invest in your own career success. So that means things like getting certifications, getting licenses, getting potentially a higher degree, because what we found is that women have to prove over and over again that they're qualified, whereas oftentimes men are just given the benefit of the doubt. So oftentimes you just have to have more credentials to get those same positions. I think it's unfortunate. I don't agree with it. It sucks. But investing in your own career success is 1000% worth it. And 3, this is going to be a little bit of a curveball because it's not a specific investment, but I think you got to invest time into finding the right partner. I have dated people who have been haters at home. Okay. They wanted me to shine bright, but not brighter than them. They wanted me to be big, but not bigger than them. And it is so frustrating trying to play small, because some of us are not meant to be small and dull. We are meant to be big and bright. And
amen.
It's like the best example is I had a college boyfriend and I helped him prepare for like Wall Street recruiting interviews. And he didn't end up getting the job because, 1, he didn't take it that seriously. He wasn't that bright and he had a very low grade point average. However, I spent so much time helping him prep. When I actually went through the interviews, I got a job on Wall Street. And the hilarious irony was that he always tried to make me feel like I was dumber than him. And that is one lesson that I took away when I went on and continued to date and find other partners. And I'm so lucky my husband now, I mean, you couldn't even imagine a bigger cheerleader. This is the person who's like, oh, well, do you think you should actually be doing that extra thing? Do you think you should try this? I want you to succeed. Like, why don't you do that? I will finish the laundry. You go work on this. Like, he is just so supportive. He thinks like the sun shines out of my butt, even on my worst days. And I feel so lucky because not only does it make me feel really good anecdotally, but from a statistics perspective, having a conscientious partner actually allows you to make on average 4% more each year. And imagine that 4% compounds over the course of your lifetime. So you make 4% more this year, but then your next year's 4% is based off of the 4% you already got last year. The next year is then based off of that extra percent you found over the past 2 years. And over time, if you have a conscientious partner who's willing to pick up slack when you need some help, you're going to both make more money. And it's going to make your entire relationship, your entire family life easier. And so I'm really lucky. I have a partner who supports me endlessly. He is the person who is my sounding board, and I'm lucky, but picking the right person in your life is the most important financial decision you will ever make.
Top 3.
Wow.
Thank you.
Great
that is
advice.
Yes.
Great. Yes. Wow. Well, as now you have already demonstrated, you have an incredible gift for communicating complex financial information in a manner that's easy to understand. Between your social media channels, podcast, and also your book, I mean, it's just the way that you explain things are, as you know, not like anybody else, but so digestible. So what are some of the most common financial mistakes you see people making? And, you know, as we know, this time is crazy from a financial standpoint. Every day is different. So what is, you know, how do you give advice, you know, suggestions during this time for people to maintain their financial security and sanity?
Yeah. First, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make during times of uncertainty is that suddenly people who had no interest in checking their portfolio, they're checking their portfolio every single day. They're scrolling that thing like it's Instagram. And I'm just like, what are you doing? You're about to hurt your own feelings. Like, it is so funny to me. They will look at these numbers and see them red and ticking downwards and then just be, and like, should I just sell everything? It's like, no. Okay. You should stay the course. Frankly, periods of market downturn, think about them like a sale at a Sephora. You would never run from a Sephora sale. I'm running at a Sephora sale. I'm like trying to get all of the stuff that I need at a discount.
Yes.
But think about that in investments. If you liked investing at prices that were here, wouldn't you like investing more at prices here? So you want to make sure that anytime you see downturns, like those are periods of opportunity. Don't think about them as a scary thing. Like, it just gives you an opportunity to essentially scoop up assets on the cheap. And I think when people actually end up selling during periods of downturn, they lock in those losses. And then once the market recovers, they don't really participate in that. And so I think it's foolish to really, really pay too close of attention. But the second point I want to make is I think people who don't pay close enough attention, especially in, the keeping up with the Joneses era of your life, which can be, a very long time. Your early 20s, you want to have the nicest, newest thing because all of your hot, cool friends are also carrying that hot, cool thing to the bar. In your 30s, it's, who's got the better mom SUV, who's got the kid in the right private school, who's got the bigger house, who has the pool with the, the really nice little waterfall. And then in your 40s, it's like, Johnny got into Harvard and then blah, 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 blah. It's like, there's always going to be this comparison game. And comparison is the thief of joy because you will end up spending money that you don't have on things that you don't need to impress people you don't like. And I have spent way too much of my life doing that. And it is a huge mistake that I look back and I'm like, wow, that money could have really been spent on something I actually enjoyed. But I've got a whole closet full of stuff that half of the things I don't even wear. And maybe it was that less expensive sweater that gets, run through the washing cycle every single week because it's so comfortable and I love it. And so you have to know where your values lie and you have to pay attention to what you're spending on, because if you don't, you can end up at the end of the year having saved nothing, spent everything, and still not feeling like you got ahead. And then I would say third is treating debt like it's a swear word. Everybody says debt, like it's the end of the world. And that if you have debt, you're a bad person. Well, let me just help you reframe. Debt is what we call it when people who don't have money borrow money. Leverage is what we call it when people who have money borrow money. And again,
ooh, I like that. Oh, yeah.
It comes back to that same garlic aioli PR firm. They have PR'd debt into a positive thing for rich people. And so I think it's really powerful to know that, like, yes, debt exists. It is a tool, but it doesn't make you morally good or bad. If you use it in a smart way, it can actually help you make money. And we shouldn't be judging people if they need to leverage debt for necessities. Times are hard right now. Like, we will see a single mom go to the grocery store and put food she can't afford on a credit card and wag our finger and be like, that's so irresponsible. Do you think she would choose to do that if she had other options? Like, question mark. I just think we are incredibly judgy when it comes to debt, especially with the, negative and shaming and, you should only eat beans and rice until all your debt's paid off. Financial gurus of eras past. But I just think that we need to really reframe our mindset because most of us have debt and it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Oh, that's great. Which leads me to
preaching. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a sermon. We on our podcast, we have a lot of women from all different backgrounds. And one of the things about a lot of women I personally know, some or like me, I had a regular job, side hustle became the main job, and then starting a new business as a thing. And then we have a lot of entrepreneurs. What advice would you give for the women? I know people listen, my guy friends listen to the pod, but I'm specifically talking about women who are considering becoming entrepreneurs and are currently entrepreneurs. What financial advice would you give them starting out? Like if people wanted to take side hustle to a more meaningful place, maybe having 2 jobs, what advice would you give them?
Use your 9 to 5 to fund your 5 to 9. So I think, and maybe this is me being overly cautious, but I know so many people who get one viral video and quit their job and think that they're about to make it. Baby, that's not how that works. That's crazy to me. Like, you need to make sure you have a sustainable business before you are ready to do that. And people don't realize this, but I actually stayed at my full-time job for 1 year and 3 months before I quit to take Your Rich BFF full-time.
Oh, okay.
I was grinding at Your Rich BFF for 500 some days before I took it full-time while doing my full-time job. And it wasn't fun. Let's be real. I did not like working 7 days a week, never taking a vacation. That was terrible. But by the time I quit to take Your Rich BFF full-time, because I had made money from Your Rich BFF, because I had continued making money for my full-time job, I was able to set aside $100,000 in cash. And
wow.
that essentially bought me a parachute.
Yeah.
I said, I'm about to jump off this cliff. And if things don't work out, I know I've got this parachute. It's not going to be a problem. I was really good at my daytime job. And so I was like, worst case scenario, I quit and I try to do this. And in 1 year's time, if this does not work, I can get back on the job hunt and I can probably find another media job pretty easily. Like, it wouldn't be that bad. I have a great network. Like, my old boss would probably take me back. And I felt like I could take every big swing and I didn't need to worry about, oh, do I have a brand deal coming in this week so I can make rent? Because I had that $100,000. And it allowed me to build sustainably versus just taking every random meme coin deal left, right, and center. And I think that decision built up a lot of trust because I say no to 99% of the things that come through my door. I don't need to say yes to them. And so I think it's 1, providing yourself a parachute, and 2, making sure that you have a sustainable business, because 15 minutes of fame or lightning in a bottle is not going to be able to maintain a business over time, even if it's a quick cash grab.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, Vivian, I'm going to take us in a different direction because you are about to celebrate your first wedding anniversary.
Yes.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. And I got to tell you, your wedding, pure fire. I mean, I loved it. I loved looking through the photos, reading the article. I mean, it was like a celebrity wedding. It was beautiful. You looked beautiful. Everything from the proposal to the going away pool party with the 3D, created oh God, it was incredible. It was incredible. I mean, that must have just been a dream come true for you. But so what has married life taught you or is teaching you about yourself, and also how is it evolving you as your rich BFF?
You know, it's so funny. People ask me this question all the time, like even just in my personal life. And I'm like,
yeah.
We've been together 8 years now. We've been married for 1, but we've been together for 8. So like,
okay.
I know everything about this person. And like, I know that if he snores and I like slightly move his jaw, he'll stop. Like, just like the little intricate nuances. But I think it really goes back to like building a life with someone. We have a fun little activity that we do. It's called a dessert walk. So when we are in New York or when we are in Miami, we'll either walk on the West Side Highway or we'll walk on the beach. And before we go to that location to do our walk, we'll stop by like either a bodega or like a little shop and we will get a dessert. So usually his dessert of choice is like an ice cream of some sort. I typically will go for more of like a candy because I like drawn out gratification while like trying to get this thing before it melts. But we have our little dessert and then we'll go on our walk and we will talk about everything in our life. Positive things, negative things, things that maybe, even if the other person did that like maybe upset us or whatever, like the resentment just never builds up because we have our dessert walk. And you can't be mad with ice cream in your hand. You just like can't. And so we talk about like fun stuff that we're really looking forward to. Vacations. How are we going to pay for those? We'll talk about stuff that's stressing us out. Right before the wedding, let me tell you, every dessert walk was about this stupid wedding.
I bet.
Planning a wedding, not nearly as fun as like being there.
I bet, yeah.
And we'll sit there and we have these financial discussions, and they help us inform not only what we're going to do that week and that month, but also like, what's our 6-month plan? What's our year-long plan? What's our plan, like ideally in 5 years and 10 years? And I think daydreaming with your partner is so important and so valuable to make sure you're still on the same page always. And I highly encourage people to take a dessert walk because it has really helped me shape some of my plans, both for Your Rich BFF, but also for our life together over the next few years. I mean, the idea to go and freeze our embryos was born out of a dessert walk. We made that decision with a piece of red dye 40 candy in my hand. I need to stop eating it because I was like, oh no, like, should I start being healthy now? But, but like, you know, we had that conversation and it's like, listen, I'm 31. I feel like I'm 21, but from a medical standpoint, I'm not getting any younger. Like, is this something we should do now? And can we afford to do it? All of those conversations happen on dessert walks. And, you know, we live our life together based on some of the conversations we have during that time.
I love that.
That's
And
so
I'm going
awesome.
to, and also you said daydreaming your life. So even if like, I want to say, if you're not married, I think the whole idea of daydreaming your life at any age, any phase, because I'm 52 and I always say, like, a lot of times, like, I don't feel 52 like you're talking about, but in my mind, there's like still that things I want to do as a person, things that I want to attract and bring in my life, concerts I want to go to where I want to sing and dance, karaoke I want to do, all the fun stuff. So I think the whole daydreaming your life and the dessert walk, I think that is just, I'm taking that. I'm not stealing it. I'm just telling you, I'm taking the dessert walk because I'm married to a person who has a sweet tooth. So he will love that.
Me
and
too.
Usually I know, I'm like, give me the potato chips, give me the Doritos and the champagne, honey. You can have that ice cream. You can keep that over there. But yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I do too. I mean, you know, my husband and I right now are kind of actualizing a daydream that we've had for many years. And so it's gone from a daydream to can we do this? And now steps to let's actually see. So yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. I love that. But it did bring up a question for me. So, so your husband likes ice cream. More instant gratification, and you like candy because you want to draw it out. So what does that say about the two of you, and how do you daydream together when one wants it immediate and the other one?
Okay, so I think it does speak to a little bit of our relationship. I think we're both very good at delayed gratification. We're very goal oriented. We are also both hyper competitive, so we make for a great pairing. But in our relationship, he's the spender and I'm the saver. He's like, oh, Viv, like, come on, we should like upgrade to the suite at the hotel, or like, Viv, we should like, you know, maybe upgrade our flights. I'm like, no, keep them. Like, I don't want to spend any more money. But I think we've started to balance each other out a little bit in that, like, I realize that like I work very hard. So does he. It's okay to enjoy our money every so often. And also I think I've balanced him out in that, like, he's no longer paying full price for jeans because I'm telling him he can get a discount code and use the right credit card and get the rewards points. We're both just a little bit better for it. But I think when it comes to goals, we're the same in that we are happy to forego a little nicety today so that we can have the big goal at the end of the rainbow. And, you know, I think the big goal really isn't just, you know, a thing. It's the idea of being able to retire earlier and be able to live life on our terms and not have money be a factor in our decision making.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, our podcast is called Just Getting Better. So after each episode, we always go like, how are we all getting better? So for our audience, Vivian, can you tell us how you're just getting better?
You know, I think a big piece of getting older and wiser is also getting better. I look back at my high school and then my college self, and I want to hug her so bad because she was so deeply insecure, and was looking for validation in so many external sources, whether that be, getting the cool girls to think she was cool. By the way, they never did. Like whether it was trying to buy stuff in my early 20s to flex to the, outside world that I had it going on. I had a lot of money, things like that. I didn't, by the way. Like I was barely making rent. These days, I think I'm just getting better because I'm starting to actually feel really comfortable in my own skin. I don't need to do anything to impress other people. I think I am impressive as it stands just because of the fact that I exist. I don't need to win that award. I don't need to get that next, accolade to have won. I'm a winner. I win. I have won. I have a great life. I have a great partner. I have a job that people would kill for. I wake up every day and I put on sweatpants. I have a nice shirt on top and my sweatpants on bottom. I'm like all the lawyers who practice during COVID. But I just feel really grateful for the life I have. And I think I'm getting better in that I'm becoming more okay with me. And I don't know if I've ever had that kind of self-love or self-appreciation or even that self-confidence probably until relatively recently.
Wow. That is so inspirational. Thank you. I mean, I know you're just honest and authentic as you always are.
Yeah.
But that speaks a lot to a lot of people. Wow. Well, this has just been,
I could talk to you all day. I could talk to you all day. We could talk nails. We could talk eyelash extensions. I used to be a beauty writer. I used to be a beauty writer. No. So you talk about the nail extensions and you talk about the economy because you have memberships for the eyelash extension place. And so what place you can go to at different places, like you can go now and get a skincare facial subscription, package, where back in the day, they didn't have packages. You had to pay like each individual. Hope they kind of had a sale. And now a lot of places, you just buy a bunch of packages. So it's still kind of like finance, but we're throwing in the beauty part. I'm always going to be a beauty person.
Well, and she does the lipstick. I love the lipstick thing. I forget what it is, but where like when the economy starts to struggle, people buy better lipstick and Yes. That was like, wow. I didn't even know that. That was so cool. So yes, your social media, podcast, book, everything is just a wealth of information, teaching people, educating people. And I'm so thankful for you. And I appreciate that you do it in a way that's fun and digestible and relatable. Yeah. Very real. Very real.
So where can our audience find you?
You guys can find me all over social media as Your Rich BFF. You can listen to my podcast, Net Worth and Chill, wherever you get your podcasts.
That's so sexy.
I'm talking about
it's a great name. It's great. Net Worth and Chill. It's so good too.
Net Worth and Chill, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find my book, Rich AF, wherever books are sold.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you guys so much for having me.